Well, I just want to thank all of you for joining us today. Have got a very interesting topic because one of the most important things in an effective job search is your willingness and openness to taking chances. Because so much of the job search is about getting visibility for your background that you otherwise might not be getting. And one of the ways to do that is to do things that other people aren't doing because you've got to stand out. I mean, that is really the name of the game. And it's why I always insist and tell everybody that I've coached and everybody that is a member of NSENG is that this is a marketing activity. It's about positioning, packaging, messaging, and targeting. You got to get to the right audience. And sometimes that means doing things that are a little bit unorthodox that a lot of other people aren't doing. And so we're just going to share a couple things with you today. So one quick reminder to everybody is that this is a great opportunity for you to network with folks, and I encourage you to do it. We are not going to have an opportunity to ask any questions, but please feel free to email me a question after we're done here, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. My email address is mgilbert@nsenginc.com. Additionally, this session is being recorded by LinkedIn. We're doing it live now, but the recording is going to be available on the very same link that everybody registered on. So you should feel free to share this link with anybody that you know is in a job search and wasn't able to join us today. So let's cover a couple quick things here. One, if you are not yet a member of NSENG, please take advantage of it. The membership's free, and you get access immediately to 2 webinar recordings and our 11,000, in fact, we are closing at 11,700 members. We're the largest job search group in the United States. We have more than one member landing a new job every single day. And it's in large part because there's a lot of great information being shared. And of course, you get access to all kinds of webinar and workshop recordings and my job search coaching services. Speaking of those, I have job search coaching packages and one-on-one custom coaching services. Can tailor it to whatever your needs might be. If you have an interest in this, just send me an email, ask me for an exploratory call, and I'd be happy to do it at no charge. And then you can determine whether or not there are things that I can offer to you that you think might be of interest. In addition, we have a library of 17 on-demand webinar recordings, everything from resumes, LinkedIn profiles, how to overcome age discrimination and ghosting, how to network more effectively and interview better. Take a look at it. Again, the website is nsenginc.com. Every one of these recordings is about 90 minutes in length. And by the way, all of the webinar and workshop recordings, aside from the 2 free ones you get when you join, are all discounted 30% during the months of November and December. In addition to those 17 webinar recordings, I have 3 on-demand workshop recordings, and these are all 3 hours in length. It includes my trademark, What the Hell approach to job search. The concept behind that is what the hell do you have to lose by doing things that other job seekers aren't doing? During this session, you're going to get a little flavor for what that what the hell approach is a little bit about. But I've created 13 what the hell moves that get detailed in this, along with my coaching. And feel free to take a look at the website to see more details on it. The second workshop recording is on how to maximize the value of LinkedIn. I talk about how to search engine optimize your LinkedIn profile, and then how to really use the platform to find more target companies, influential individuals. And then once you've done that, what's the next step to get you the visibility with those folks? And the third workshop is about how to create an effective job search plan. If you have not yet joined our LinkedIn group, and this is separate and apart from joining NSENG on our website, please go ahead and do so. Of our 11,700 members, about 9,000 of them are active participants in our LinkedIn group, and it's a great place to see potential advertisers that are promoting their jobs here, as well as networking with other folks that are members of the group. By the way, we have 3,000 of our members who have landed in great jobs. So you're going to be able to interface with folks that are both employed and those that are looking for opportunities. The next free LinkedIn Live event that I'll be conducting will end the year on Wednesday, December 11th, again from noon to 12:30 Central Time, and it's going to be an open Q&A session. So if you have any questions that are job search related, you can email them to me in advance. You can chat them in during the session, or If you don't have a question, but you're just curious, just listen in. There are always questions that people ask that others are also interested in hearing about. So it's a great place to learn from other people as well. So let's talk about taking chances in your job search. And I'm just going to cite 8 clear examples here. Maybe some of these are things that you have tried. Maybe some of them are new to you. So we're going to go through all 8 of these, and we're going to talk about, how to, implement each one. These are not difficult to do, but I got to tell you, one of the biggest deterrents to an effective job search is the individual holding themselves back. And so the fact is, with any new products we bring to market, we got to create visibility for them. Most people don't know about them before they're launched. And now you are that new product. So you've got to be willing to do things that are a little bit different than what other people may be doing. So let's take it right from the top. The very first one, create small collaboration groups. Now, NSE&G is a great organization to actually create small splinter groups off of it. And here's what I mean by that. I did this oftentimes when I was in a job search. I would team up with other people who were not in my discipline, but who could be a great feeding ground. So for example, I was the marketing person. I would team up with somebody in sales, operations, product management, general management, HR, product development, finance. The group could be as big as you want it to be. But we had an understanding among each one of us that if any of us came across job opportunities that we thought were of interest to somebody else in the group, all we did was take them and forward them on to that individual. This way, you've got 5, 6, 7, or 8 people that are out now helping one another. And so you can set these up as ad hoc groups. It doesn't have to be a lot of formalities to it, but you just have an understanding amongst each other that you're going to help each other out to the extent that you can. And the fact is, we all come across job opportunities that aren't relevant to you specifically, but I'll bet people who would be interested in it. So I encourage you to consider doing this. And again, you can do it with NSE&G members. You can do it with other people from your past lives that are also in a job search. And I think you'll find that it will get you some additional traction that you might not be getting today. All right, number 2, and this is a really important one. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are under the impression that if you're in a job search, the most important place to go is to HR and talent acquisition. And that is the correct answer if you're looking for an HR or talent acquisition position. But my suggestion is to go around talent acquisition and go around the applicant tracking system. Here's why. Who are the people that make decisions, influence decisions, and have budget? It's not talent acquisition. It's the people that are the hiring manager and their peers, and if they have a boss. These are the people that are going to have the heaviest weighting when it comes to decide who is going to be the chosen candidate. So the important things for you is, how do I identify who that potential hiring manager is? And I recognize that in some cases, it may be hard for you to find that person. But you can go onto LinkedIn and you can do searches by title. And even if you don't get the right person, you should email them directly, and they might forward your email over to the right person on your behalf. So we know that, phone screens are typically a checking the box exercise like you see here. But what gets you there ultimately does not have to be the applicant tracking system. And I know a lot of people think that that's the only way to get interviews. I can tell you, I have coached hundreds of people who have been rejected by the applicant tracking system within 15 or 20 minutes, and I've still been able to get them interviews because we go to the right people. We go to 4, 5, 6 people inside a firm that have that sphere. They are sitting inside the sphere of influence. And those are the people that are in positions to influence decisions when it comes to making hiring decisions. An ATS is nothing more than a piece of software. It's looking for keyword matches in your resume or in your profile and trying to determine, okay, does this person have enough matches, or can I check enough of the boxes to warrant potentially having that person available for a phone screen? But you got to get to the people that have the power. And that is clearly the hiring manager and the people that are going to influence the hiring decision, because it's typically not only one person that you'll be interviewing with during the process. All right, let's look at a quick example. Let's say you're going to respond to a sales manager role, and you send your cover letter and your resume. Okay, now what a lot of people do is they focus all their attention applying online and maybe trying to find out who is, the recruiter that's, handling this search. And there's nothing wrong with applying online to a position, but the more effective approach, or more important, is that you need to get visibility with the right people. So if the position that you're going for is a sales manager role, and let's just assume that the hiring manager is the individual in yellow there, the director of sales. Well, he or she is not going to be the only person that's going to, be interviewing you. So I would suggest that you send an email off to maybe the director of operations, the director of product management, the director of marketing, the director of finance, maybe director of operations, and with regard to product development, any number of, different titles, because the fact is that when a company gets 50 to 100 resumes, they oftentimes will stop looking and see whether or not, with what they've got in front of them, warrants, candidates that should get an interview. But even if your resume number 101 and they cut it off at 100, if you get in the hands of the right people, they can oftentimes give you the visibility that you're not able to get on your own. So I think you'll find that this approach is going to be able to get you a lot more traction. Number 3, pursue the hidden job market. Now, here's how I define the hidden job market. It's positions that are not advertised online. Okay, it's not sitting on Indeed. It's not, on LinkedIn. It's not on CareerBuilder or ZipRecruiter, or a lot of these other aggregation sites. The fact is that networking is such a big part of getting your next job. In fact, there are people out there that are telling us that it's 70% of all the jobs that are acquired involve some level of marketing. An interesting couple statistics here from the U.S. Department of Labor is that 70% of the jobs are not acquired through job postings. Okay, it's through one of these other activities. And people that are internally referred have a 40% better chance of being hired after they've had an interview. And one of the quickest ways to ensure that you get an interview is if you've got a networking connection who can be an internal advocate on your behalf and introduce you into the hiring manager. So that's always going to be an important part of anybody's job search. Increasing your network of connections on LinkedIn is one way to do it. And it's a really important way because you'll have more chances to find second-degree connections that could be sitting inside companies that are of interest to you, which means somebody who's a first-degree connection to you can make that potential introduction on your behalf. Notice, headhunters, they represent a very tiny percentage. And I think that this is being very generous. I believe that, headhunters represent probably less than 1 or 2% of all the available jobs that are out there, because most companies can't afford to pay 30 or 33% of the individual's first year salary if they get hired. So keep in mind, networking is a big part of this. Your ability to, develop internal advocates certainly, give you a lot more visibility. And if you're spending more than 10% of your week answering online ads, then you're not prioritizing your time appropriately. Number 4, when you have an interview, there is an important question that you should be asking before the interview even starts. Because remember, the interview is really a two-way street. Yes, they are interviewing you and they're trying to determine whether or not you've got the right skills and experience for the position they're trying to fill. But you are also interviewing them. You want to know whether or not this is the right company, whether this is the kind of job that I want to consider. And so I am always coaching folks and telling them there's a really important question that you as the interviewee should ask before the interview even starts. And here's how it goes. Before we get started, would you mind if I ask a quick question? And oftentimes the person who's interviewing you will say, sure, no problem, happy to answer a quick question. Okay. And if the answer to that, that question on your part is no, that's okay. It may say, can you save it to the end? In which case you can save it to the end. But it's far more beneficial to have the answer to the question that I'm going to share with you before the interview gets going, because it's going to help you pivot to appropriate topics. Here's the question you want to ask. What do you think are the 3 biggest challenges facing the individual who's going to be moving into this position. And when they answer that question for you, it's like getting the answers to the test. They are going to tell you, you know what, I think it's this, this, and this. These three things are going to weigh very heavy in our ability to make a decision on who's the right candidate for this role. But if you don't ask that question up front, you don't have that information and intelligence going into the interview. And the fact is, it can be hugely beneficial, because we know that a big part of being a good interviewee is having great stories to tell. You all have to be great storytellers. And if you know what the three biggest challenges are, whether it's for a marketing person, it might be lead generation, website development, and event planning. Great. Think about those stories that you're going to tell that relate to those three biggest categories that they said are going to be big determinants as to who is going to be a finalist for this position. But if you don't ask it on the front end, you aren't giving yourself the flexibility, but more importantly, the knowledge to know, I'm going to focus on those three things in particular. And with every interview, you should always come into that interview with, basically your own little cheat sheet. On the left-hand column should be the key requirements of the job, and on the right-hand column should be a few words that remind you of the story you're going to tell on behalf of every one of those key requirements in the left-hand column. And again, if you have enough stories, boy, you can pivot back to these three things very easily. All right, number 5. If you've been rejected by a company, and what I mean here is if you have been through at least 2 rounds of interviews, okay? Maybe it's going to be a phone screen, and the second one is likely to be with the hiring manager. If you haven't been through at least 2 rounds of interviews, I don't think this move is applicable, because you cannot expect every company who gets every single resume to respond to every individual. It's overwhelming for talent acquisition teams. Let's face it, for every decent job that's out there, there's probably 100 to 200 people responding to them. That number may even be increasing as we move into the new year. But it doesn't hurt to ask, because I'm always of the belief that if you don't ask, you don't get. And what's the worst that could happen here? You're no worse off if you don't get the answer. But what I suggest you do is, if you've been through at least 2 rounds of interviews, which means you have allocated and dedicated a fair amount of your precious time, and so have they. And in my mind, if you've been through two rounds, they owe you a decision. They owe you, if nothing else, some feedback. So I would suggest you go back to the hiring manager and say, for my own edification, for other opportunities that I might be interviewing with down the road with other companies, can you tell me what it is that enabled you to decide not to move forward with me in the interview process? Now, 50% of them probably won't answer that question for fear that they might say something that could be construed as being discriminatory. The use of 1 or 2 wrong words could potentially open them up. So there are a lot of companies that will say, I'm sorry, but our policy doesn't let us. But there are plenty of companies and individuals who are willing to share. And what you might get is some very, very valuable feedback that tells you, you know what, you were weak in these 2 areas, and we've deemed them to be extremely important to the person who's going to be successful in this role. Or maybe, the story that you told wasn't convincing enough, but you've got no downside to asking. And the fact is that, and we see this a lot, okay, companies will take 6 months to find the right candidate, and they hire that person. And within 3 or 4 months, that person's gone. It didn't work out. Or what oftentimes happens is that people get job offers. And of course, like all of you who might be in a job search right now, when you're in a job search, you're not sitting around waiting for just that one opportunity. You're creating lots of opportunities. You're now a salesperson. You're building up a backlog of opportunities. And the fact is that sometimes you get a job opportunity, you get an offer, you take it. And guess what happens? 2 weeks later, a month later, 2 months later, the company you were really interested in and the job that you really wanted now comes through, because they're never on your exact timeline, and you can't expect companies to move as fast as you'd like them to. But when that offer comes through, you know what? A lot of people say, you know what, I'm really sorry to let you know this, but I've got a better offer and I'm going to, move on. And guess what? That role that you interviewed for, what might be a month ago, is now available again. And if you hadn't reached back to them and expressed really, sincere interest, they might not be in a position to reconsider you. But if you do, you might be sitting at the top of the pack of the people that they're going to go back to. So there's nothing wrong with reaching back. Again, I think the one caveat is at least have been through 2 rounds of interviews. I think that's fair for you and fair for the company. All right, number 6, be open to project work. Okay, and I know that most of you are not looking for project work. You're looking for a full-time opportunity. But there's nothing wrong if at some point during the interview process, you get the feeling that maybe they're going to have a difficult time making a decision on the right person. And it's one of the reasons why companies tend to take extraordinary lengths of time. It's interesting. I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, and the person said, 20 years ago, companies were able to hire individuals that they interviewed after just 2 interviews. Typically, people were being hired within 3 weeks. Now that we've got all this technology and the ability for everybody to communicate so more, effectively, what was taking 3 weeks is now taking 3 months or longer. There's no common sense to this. But the fact is if you feel that, that a company isn't going to be moving forward, or maybe it's going to wait on making a decision, there's nothing wrong with offering them a try and buy opportunity. Hey, if you guys have some work that needs to get done right now, and you can't wait until you get the right person into this role, I'd be happy to take that on for you. By the way, you're not going to work for free. It's going to bring some income into your household. And it gets you that foot in the door that you're looking for. So you get some visibility. And the fact is if you start to fill a gap that they have, they may like the work you do. And it could ultimately lead to a full-time role. This has happened for me on multiple occasions when I was in job searches, and I've seen it happen with many people that I've coached. The fact is you just want to get on the inside somehow. And sometimes it's a project or consulting role that can get you in there. And by the way, when you are interviewing while you're taking on the project work, you still should be looking for a job. When you interview, you're going to interview with more confidence because you are working on project work. Okay, you're not somebody who is just answering ads and hoping for the best. It's going to give you a level of confidence when you interview that you might not have, today when you aren't doing that. So there again, great potential upside to some of these things, including being open to project work. Number 7, if and when you get a job offer, everything is negotiable. Every offer has a compensation range, okay? And compensation is not just salary, okay? So you get a job offer and you decide, you know what? It's about 10, 15, or however, many percent less than what I was expecting. There's nothing wrong with going back and asking them for consideration. How you ask for it is really important, and who you ask it of is equally important. That is a conversation for you and your future boss, you and the hiring manager. And here are just a few of the things that you can consider. The first thing you want to do is say, look, I really appreciate the offer. I want to give it, I'd like to just give it some time and get back to you. And oftentimes they'll give you a week to consider it. Now, a few days later, you come back to them and go, you know what? I thought about the position. I'm really excited about the opportunity to join the team and be a part of this organization. I was wondering if there might be some consideration or some flexibility in the offer to help increase it a bit. There's many things that you can put out there for them to consider, okay? It's important that you don't say this as if I don't get this, then I'm walking. It could be more salary, because most companies, particularly we know large companies do this, and I've been in a few of them, they have a range associated with every job. It might be, between 90 and 140,000 in a given range. It might be from 120 to 160. And typically they like to hire people in the lower third quadrant or in the middle of that range, which means there's room to move. So there oftentimes is room for this salary to be increased. But if they decide that the salary isn't something that they want to touch, there are other creative ways and opportunities for you to present to them. Might be putting you on an incentive plan if there isn't one. Could be a one-time signing bonus, which is easy for companies to give because it doesn't affect your base pay, and your merit increases each year aren't based off of that signing bonus. The company might be privately held, in which case they could give you stock options. Could be publicly held, in which case they give you stock options. Maybe you want them to consider reviewing you and considering you for a merit increase in 6 months instead of having to wait 12 months. Maybe you want a better title. Maybe it's a managerial title today, and you might say, you know what, having a director's position would help open up a lot more doors with the third-party vendors that I would be working with. It might be a matter of working 1 or 2 days remote as opposed to being 100% in the office. It could be additional paid vacation. Maybe it's an athletic membership. But the last one's important, particularly for those of you that are going into more senior roles. It's quite possible that you might have an employment agreement. The severance associated with you being terminated is really important, because if you don't get a termination clause when you come into the company, trust me, they're not going to give it to you when they ask you to leave. So it's something you've got to get in writing on the front end. Okay, and it typically is associated with more senior roles, maybe director, VP, and C-level positions. But the important thing is you want to have severance pay, and it could be 2 months, 6 months, depending upon your role. But you want it to be given when you are terminated without cause. And the definition of cause is important. Cause should be defined as something that you do that's illegal, whether you do something that's fraudulent or embezzling funds, right? Not that any of you would consider doing this, but what you don't want cause to be is because of performance, job performance, because it's just too subjective. And it's real easy for a company to say, well, I'm sorry, but you didn't perform to the level that we were expecting you to. There's too much gray in that ability to determine whether or not you did the job well. So again, if you are able to incorporate a termination clause into your letter of offer or to an employment agreement, it's important that you have a severance payout at the end, because what you don't want is to work for the company for a number of years and then suddenly you get 2 weeks. We know 2 weeks doesn't last very long when you're in a job search. So it's something to keep in mind. So this is a poll that I did on LinkedIn about a week ago. I do a lot of polling on LinkedIn and get pretty good responses, and all my questions on the polls are all job search related. And the question that I put out there is that if you've been at a job search over the past 3 years, what was your primary reason for seeking a new job? And I gave everybody 4 choices. Now, one choice that I intentionally left off of the choices was financial reasons, because I don't want people, to feel that they should share whether or not they, the money was tight or that they were in a financial constraint. So I gave them, the following 4 choices. There were 173 people that answered this poll over a few days. And what was really interesting is that the top vote getter was better company culture. And I think that this is a very strong message to all of the companies that are out there today, because we've all seen, and I'm sure many of you have worked in some what you would refer to as toxic environments that are not really, not where you'd like them to be. And so I think this is a message, to a lot of firms that says, you know what, conduct yourself ethically, treat your employees fairly, and do the right thing. And it's difficult to find, what is the company culture like before you get into the company. And historically, this kind of survey would have had close to 50% of the people saying a better salary. But there is one way you can get some insight into company culture, and that's through your LinkedIn connections, who may be connected to somebody who currently is working or has worked in that company that's of interest to you. You can do this by doing filtered searches on LinkedIn. This is something I train a lot of people on, but this is a really easy way to get inside information on what it's like to work in this company. So let me just share with you some websites that will give you information on compensation. Okay. Salary.com, you can plug in the job title and the city and state, and it will give you a range of the kinds of salaries that they see for people in those positions in New York, Boston, Houston, Omaha, Nebraska. Okay. Payscale.com and Glassdoor. Now, Glassdoor is an important one because it will also give you, and this is why a lot of people go to Glassdoor, it gives you direct comments from current employees and past employees on their impressions of the company. Now, one word of warning is that a lot of the comments will tend to be more on the negative side, because when somebody is terminated from a company, they don't want to, stay silent sometimes. So you will hear some bad comments in here, and you're going to hear some good ones. But a lot of these comments are very valid, and it may raise some concerns on your part that you can then begin to probe as you're going through the interview process. So, just keep these three in mind. Again, for compensation and the additional bonus of Glassdoor is that you can get some insight into a company's culture. The last bold move is to be bold. You got to remember, there's only one advocate for you that really knows what you want, and that's you. So don't be afraid to be strong in interviews. Share your opinions. You've got subject matter expertise, and you want to make sure that the person on the receiving end of what you're telling them understands the value that you can bring. This is not to say that you need to be cocky. You want to be confident. And we tend to hire people that are confident, because it tells me, and I interviewed so many people throughout my career, is that I always looked at somebody I was interviewing and I said, is this somebody I can envision putting them up in an audience in front of my peers and my superiors, and could they hold their own? This is why presentation skills are so important. But it's also why my what the hell approach to job search is a great way to attack this, because the concept is really about being bold and doing things that separate you from every other resume that they've received. Before we close it out, these again are the 8 chances that I suggest you do. And if some of you are doing them, I encourage you to keep doing them. Every one of these is something that every one of you can do. And if for some reason any of you are uncomfortable with it, please reach out to me. But these are things that are in your control. They're in your control. And I know a lot of people in a job search think there's nothing in my control. It's all out of my control. And that's absolutely not the case. So you need to step back from your search and think about some of the things that you might do differently, and then try something different. So a couple closing things. I encourage you that if you have not yet joined NSE&G, go to the website, NSENGinc.com, take advantage of the free membership. If you're not yet connected with me on LinkedIn, send me a LinkedIn request. Tell me you attended this session, and I'll give you access to my 30,000 LinkedIn connections. If you haven't joined our LinkedIn group, which is in addition to joining on the website, join it. It's a great, safe place to have conversations with other folks that are in this group, both employed and unemployed. Check out all the videos and podcast interviews that are sitting up on the website. Look for the next upcoming event, the library of webinar and workshop recordings, along with my coaching services. This, again, a quick reminder, mark your calendar for Wednesday, December 11th from 12 to 12:30 Central Time. I'll be taking questions from any number of people. We'll answer as many as I can. These sessions oftentimes go long. But again, even if you can't join, register, and you'll be able to listen to the recording just like what we're doing right now. And then lastly, if you are considering the possibility of working with a coach, feel free to send me an email, mgilbert@nsenginc.com. Happy to have an exploratory conversation with you and talk about your search and how I think I can help. Again, thank you so much for taking a part of your day to join us. And I want to take this opportunity, because I'm not going to see most of you over the next few weeks. Have a really happy Thanksgiving. Spend the time, enjoying your family and your friends. And all the best to you as you come back into the holiday season, because there is a lot of hiring that goes on between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day, because a lot of companies have use it or lose it policies, where if they don't use the budget for the open headcount that they've got, they may not still have that open head count come January 1st. Again, thanks again for being a part of this event. All the best to you in the holidays coming up ahead and in the new year. Take care.